We're here at the Neil Haley Show on the Total Celebrity segment, and I'm excited to welcome to the program former NFL player, college football player, all-stars. We're going to talk about John Patrick Sullivan. John, thanks for stopping by. How are you?
Hi, Neil. Thanks for having me. Really great to be here, and I'm excited to explore with you.
I'm excited to explore with you first. Now, did you always want to be a football player?
Yeah, that one was decided early on in my life. I was a troubled kid. A little bit of a not a classroom student, so I was outside a lot. That little edge, and sports was a way for me to be focused, organized, and get recognized in some way other than academics.
Where'd you grow up?
Grew up in Long Island, Massapequa.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when I was thinking you went to the University of Illinois to play college football, was the area where you were located big for high school football?
Well, interesting enough, that's a good question, because the coach at Illinois at that time was Bob Blackman, and he was up in Dartmouth before, and he had a lot of connections back in the East Coast. So they spent a lot of time back in that New York metro area recruiting, and they found me out in Long Island, and they really hustled. They really tried really hard. I was recruited heavily when I was a senior in high school. They don't allow this anymore, but I went to 17 different universities to go check out which one I wanted to go to. And it was a bit overwhelming, I must say. It was too much.
So you really were recruited highly then, it sounds like.
Yeah, I had Woody Hayes in my living room one day, and Ohio State, Michigan.
Really, you had Woody Hayes in your living room?
Yeah, he came to visit.
Was he a nice guy?
He was intense. You can feel the intensity.
Sure, exactly. So you weren't surprised about what Woody Hayes did later then, right?
Yeah, right. But he tackled that guy on the sideline. He was quite intense. But you felt that in his personality. He didn't shut it off, even though he was trying to be on his best behavior at the living room with my mom and dad. But it was just an interesting time. You're 18 years old, and there's a lot of pressure, a lot of people, adults, this is their livelihood, and they're really intensely recruiting seniors all over the country, and it's their job. So it gets really a big deal. It becomes a really big deal, especially schools like Illinois. It doesn't have the Ohio State, Michigan, USC following, so they have to work twice as hard, and that's what they did with me. They just really put on the red carpet.
That's
great.
It's important, right? That red carpet for sure. And then so
yeah.
You chose Illinois, and why?
Well, the Illinois came into first. I had a great visit. There was a couple of kids from Long Island that were already out there, and they showed me around, and I had a nice visit. But the key was, one night, I'll never forget, I was sitting in my bedroom reading, and my mother yelled up the stairs and said, "John Patrick, Dick Butkus is on the phone." And I thought it was one of my best friends who lived around the corner, was also another football player. He's the quarterback on the team. And I said, "Mom, that's Geiger, don't bother with him. Just tell him I'll call him back later." And she goes, No, it's really Dick Butkus. So I walked down, and here's Dick Butkus on my phone, and he started getting involved in the recruiting aspects. Got to meet him a couple of times out there in Illinois. And then I was really sold on that linebacker tradition. I was playing middle. I wanted to play middle linebacker. I was really set on that. And he, became like a mentor. And I think I told you this before, but I broke all his records at Illinois. And it was really where, I had a great experience out there. We were a mediocre team at best, but the great news was, I got to get recruited. They find you, like the Chicago Bears were watching Illinois kid, and so they recruited me in the 6th round in 1979 draft. And it just kind of rolled from there into training camp. Great. Buddy Ryan was a linebacker coach.
Wow.
And had a great first preseason. I was the MVP on defense, had an interception. And I got hurt at the end of the that game with the Jets, it was a preseason game, and I couldn't walk like for 10 days, and that was it. There was some guy right behind me, stepped in, and they let me go soon afterwards. And I got picked up almost immediately by the Jets, though. So that was great. I didn't miss that season, 79. And I had my little dance up in that big league with the Jets. I had my 2.5 years with them. And it was great. I had a great time because I was from New York. I was always the guy in the locker room looking for lots of tickets. So it was a great experience going home, playing. And it was the evolution. This is where I really want to get into that intense experience at such a young age. I think I was done playing. I went to Canada for a while, and I went to United States Football League, but I was done like I was 25, 26, and my whole life was, pre-football. I mean, it was.
So you played in the USFL. You played in the USFL as well.
Yeah, I played in the United States Football League with the Chicago, what they call the Blitz, I think it was.
Blitz, yeah.
George Allen was the coach.
Right.
It was a really good. That was a good
Pittsburgh
experience.
Maulers. The Pittsburgh Maulers were part of that league, and the Washington Generals were owned by Donald Trump. Right.
Right. I got to play with them for a little while. That was the end of my career. I remember they transferred me because they were just looking for fresh meat by that time. So they sent me over to the Generals, and I'm running around in practice one day, and the coach is screaming at me. And I just got there. I mean, it was like my first day, like I was supposed to know the whole playbook. And I just said, that's it. I took my helmet off, threw it on the ground, walked in the locker room, and I got a shower, and I left. That was the end.
Did you get to meet Trump, the owner? Did you get to meet Trump as the owner? Did you get to meet him ever?
I never got to meet Trump. I got to meet Herschel Walker. He was on the team.
Oh, yeah.
That was, so that was an experience being with him and the team. But it was just, that was the end of my I was really, I think we talked about this earlier, but my body was really left at University of Illinois with all the tackles I made. And they really, got their money's worth out of me. And by the time I got to the pros, I already had knee surgery. My shoulder should have been operated on. And it was just, my body was saying, shelf life is over, brother. Time out, go. But you're young and you think you can still do it. And I just kept on banging it, my heads, and it came out to be, finally it was, it came out of retirement twice, once for United Football, for Canada. I went to Canada first, and then I went to United States Football League after that, after like a year after Canadian ball. And I just couldn't let go because it was such a big part of my life. But that's, the next phase of that. I don't know if we want to get into it right now, but that was the spiritual awakening that happened during football.
Really? So tell me the story about how that awakening happened during football.
Yeah, I'd love to talk a little bit about that, because what I felt when I was thinking about talking, the samurai warrior, right? That was like the Zen beginnings of how to take these warriors, really, kick-ass guys, like, spiritual warriors. Here they are, all Zenned out. And they said, we got to do something with them after football. What do we do? So they came up with this spiritual practice, the Zen, very strict, sitting quiet, stillness, meditating is not easy for these warrior guys. So in a way, I kind of use that as a metaphor for me, is like, I learned all this stuff about being present in football, being in the moment. If you're thinking about anything else on that football field, you're going to get your ass handed to you on a sideways platter, So you got to be so focused and so in the moment that this is a training that you don't get anywhere else. And martial arts is another way, any kind of sports, I should say, not any, but football especially, because you're going to get hurt if you're not knowing where to go before the ball snapped, actually. Where you're leaning, where you read the defense, offensive alignment, you read the quarterback eyes, so he can kind of give you a little bit of a clue where he's looking at, where the ball's going. So that's where I started developing this, I call it an inner sense. And then after football, I went to work for Budweiser, typical jock thing to do. And all of a sudden I'm sitting in the sales room one day and I'm saying, oh, we just won the Bud Light tournament, whatever it was, the Bud Light sales quota. And and everybody shook hands and everything. And it was just, there was something missing from me that was like, really, that wasn't on the energy that I got from playing sports. And then a couple other personal things happening, like my parents passed away, death, loss, all those things. And I wasn't prepared for it. I was about a year or something out of my NFL career. And that was the one thing that I remember being with my father towards the end of his life. And I said, I have to find a path that has a death process, a death journey with it. He was a Catholic, Irish Catholic, New York City cop, beautiful guy, but he really struggled at the end because of that, not having the contact. So that's where I started really getting involved when I saw that happen, went through a divorce, that personal stuff that really rocks your boat and says, who am I? Who is this guy?
Exactly.
That's really what it came down to, were these personal losses, death, and I said, no, I got to find something. And I don't know, I hope everyone understands this, but I met a girl that dances down in Atlanta, Georgia. I was moved down to Atlanta, Georgia to work for a beer company down there. And that was a really big next step for me to get out of New York, because I was so, everybody knew me. I played for the Jets. I couldn't leave that identification. So when I got moved down to Atlanta, I met this woman who was a yoga practitioner. And she said, why don't you come to one of my classes, or we're going to go to a class tonight. So I went and changed my life. I had another Japanese word is called satori, which is a total embodied present feeling that I never really experienced playing football, because you're always in pain. Right. You always hurt. You're always bruised up. Your neck hurts. Your arms hurt. Your knees hurt. So when I was in my first downward facing dog, I had this awakening experience, and I never left. I just stayed. I started studying with that local teacher, and then I went, into it full time. I became a yoga teacher for 20, I think it was like 23, 24 years. I studied yoga all over the world, got to live all over the world. And that was my beginning of the resurrection of the spiritual awakening.
So when you see that spiritual awakening, so you said yoga really gave you that balance when you figured it out and all these different things. Who were the mentors that got you so that you became the teacher that you were for 24 years?
It's a good question. The mentor that, first of all, the football laid in a very armored middle linebacker. You're 240 pounds. I muscle bound. At that time, we used to do bench press and squats. So here's this guy. I could hardly move out of my own way. So I started doing yoga, and the great mentor that I was attracted to was a man named B.K.S. Iyengar, who had all these props for people like myself. So instead of touching your hand to the floor, you touch your hand to a chair. Right. You touch your hand to a block. So he had all these props. So that was the man that really opened up the yoga world for me, because I probably couldn't do it because I was so muscle bound and armored in the beginning. And then as I got into, years and years, I got into different forms. There was a guy named Patabi Joyce. And I used to not live in India, but I used to live in England. And we used to go to India quite often, because my girlfriend at the time was a yoga master herself, and she was a senior teacher at BKS Iyengar. So that's where I got into go to India, spend 4 or 5 months there, studying, living, starting to change my whole inner world. That was great for me, because I had such an American, apple pie and football and all that stuff. So going out in this country, leaving for a while, living in Europe for a while, it really was a mentor for me there. The growing up, individuating my own sovereignty, and all this was, part of my my life. It was really important to continue to become a better person. There's a great saying, I don't know if you ever got him, Ken Wilber. He's a spiritual teacher, and he always says, you wake up, you grow up, and then you show up. And I always love that, because there's a lot of stuff that was left in me from football that I brought into the yoga world. I'll be very honest. I wasn't a very kind or compassionate yoga teacher in the beginning, because I was still working off that ego structure of a football player. It's not easy to change that. You know,
exactly.
it takes years.
So when you talk about yoga, define yoga versus meditation. Is it the same? One and the same?
Okay, so you're asking some great questions. So why I think yoga, what they be really discriminating is called hatha yoga. Hatha yoga is the physical poses that you do in a class down the YMCA, that you do in a health club. And what that did for me, if somebody told me to sit on my butt for 30 minutes on a cushion in the beginning, you know, I would have went crazy because I had that ADHD and dyslexia and all that. For me, sitting still, that's why, you know, we go back to the academics. I could never really sit still in class. So I had that personality type, brilliant on the football field, brilliant on the wrestling mat, brilliant on the track and field, but take me and tell me to sit on a cushion. So the meditation came later on. When I started yoga was very physical for me, which I needed because that was my sport background. Got into a very supple kind of movement, more into the chi and the prana that they call the energy, feeling those lines opening up, or meridians. Yeah. And then when I went to India, one of my trips to India, I started studying with a teacher that taught both the hatha yoga, and then he would sit after class for like 30 minutes. And it was like, I was paralyzed. I couldn't believe how hard it was. So when I came back to America after I lived in Europe for 10 years, I lived in a Tibetan Buddhist monastery for a while up in California. And Cayucos is a town up there by Morro Bay. And I stayed there for like 9 months, 10 months, and I just studied it deeply and became more of a meditation practitioner. He still did yoga, but like now my days are, I do mostly my practice is sitting in the emptiness. The yoga comes in, the hatha yoga comes in to loosen up a little bit now, you know, to get more supple. If I'm feeling tight in my back and moving, what we just moved, you know, you start feeling contracted. I do my yoga practice. But my main practices today are the sitting, are the meditation. And there is a big difference between hatha yoga and meditation.
What do you like better? You've done both.
Well, now, you know, as I'm aging, the sitting is so much better. But I still respect and honor the asanas, they call the poses, asanas, because they had so much impact on me as a young, you know, 25, 26-year-old man. It really, I have great respect for it. And I respect for India for bringing it over here and picking up. And today, you know, you see how popular it is today. You know, every corner there's a yoga studio.
Exactly. But now meditation's getting popular too. So what do you do now?
That's what I'm doing now. I'm doing the meditation. I'm teaching. I worked with a group of people out of San Francisco called the Diamond Approach, and they bring in inquiry practices, meditation practices, a little chanting and the way. And that's what I'm doing now. I'm finding my groove in the first. I'll get up and I'll do my sitting practice. And then Anne, my wife, who you know very well, gets up and we do inquiry. You know, we have, 15, 20 minutes and we talk about what's happening inside us, you know, where we're at, what's going on, what happened yesterday, and we don't comment. We don't try to break the circle about, you know, oh, you should do this. I just let her talk, let her inquire. And then at the end, I ask her a couple of questions that deepen her inquiry. And I get a chance, 15, 20 minutes, and it keeps a relationship. I've been married now 18 years, it's a miracle, right? And so it's the way I feel, it keeps it fresh, keeps it current, keeps the relationship sparkly, you know, fresh. So it really has helped.
So both you and Aine do the meditation business together in coaching? Together?
Yes, we do it together. She's not such a sitting, that's where she's working on is her sitting practices. And she's really, you know, as you know her, writing is her meditation, a lot more inward, you know, stuff, work. But she does quite a bit of we sit before we inquire, you know, for a short period, like 10 minutes or so, which is fine. It'll get you in that flow and in that, you know, checking in and making sure you're breathing. So that's where we're at with our practices.
Awesome. Where can people learn more about your meditation stuff so they can learn how they can learn from you and stuff? Where can they go?
Yeah, well, the first thing I would recommend, that there's many, many different. I'm not officially teaching meditation, but what I would recommend, what you're called for. The first thing I would, look for is someone in the meditation that you resonate with, because it's such a personal journey, and to make sure that someone has the depth and the capacity to help you through your mind, your monkey mind, they call it, which is very, busy doing this. And you have to get really in with someone that knows that. There's a lot of Vipassana is a good one, because they sense your body and they sense into the sensations. Vipassana meditation is great. The Diamond Approach has a whole school, and they're all over now. The Diamond Approach is where I've been hanging out for the past 20 something years. Let's see, where else do I get inspired? There's a guy named Arthur Kilmurray, who's from Boston originally. He's up in the East Coast, but he's a wonderful teacher, and he's doing stuff online. Arthur Kilmurray. He's an Iyengar teacher, but now doing more Taoist and yeah. So there's a lot of good teachers, but I would recommend for the people to really take some time. Take a couple of different classes, go around, see where the best fit for you personally is.
That's great. So right now you're not coaching it, teaching it, you're just more practicing.
No, right now I'm not doing any kind of coaching and practicing. Ann and I are working on this book. Ain, I noticed you called it Ain. Ain and I are working on this book, Linebacker to Love. It's been going on forever. So that's how my main focus, my body of work feels like, put this little book together for somebody that walks out of the locker room, and instead of getting lost like I did for a couple of years in the black hole, that I'll be able to pass that on to some kid that just got cut and doesn't know where to go, who to hang out with, So that's my my dream, is to get that out, get it out to the NFL Players Convention and all that kind of stuff, and get the word out that they, you need to have some kind of spiritual path after you're done playing ball.
Yeah. Are you thinking of going back to tell them in the NFL about that?
Yeah, for sure. I still have some good contacts. There's some good forward-thinking men, that are in the NFL Players Association. That when I'm ready for it, I know that they'll be open to and receptive, because they want to help the population, the retired players, and that's where the ones that really need help now, because the young guys, the guys that are playing, and the guys just out of the league, the ego is so big, and it's so intense that it's hard for them to hear. But when you get to my age and younger, even, you're more open to the spiritual realms.
All right,
and what's
fantastic.
possible.
Well, appreciate it. So definitely check you guys out. Appreciate the story, and I think it's great to know about how you've evolved in your career. But I think that NFL players definitely need this, and retired ones, because meditation again helps promote brain health. Your brain is better, and also your body. Brain is the most important thing to help your body move and develop. Without a good brain, your healthy brain, you're not going to have a healthy body. So that's so important.
Yeah, the trauma that we go through with the brain injuries, because when I played, they used to tell me, "Oh, you just go get a helmet out of that box." And you went and finished. It was, it was like it was breaking my nose, all this coming down. It was wild. It was a different game than it is today. So that's when the trauma, the concussions helps tremendously the brain, the meditation and the stillness and the hatha yoga. You turn upside down, you do your headstand, you do inversion. So I highly recommend it. And I after talking with you, it does inspire me to get back into that, the book, and to get some exercises for these guys and help out, as much as I can in my service, be of service.
Be of service. I appreciate it. Well, thanks again, John Patrick, for coming by.
You're welcome, Neil.
It was a fun conversation. Take care.
All right. Thanks very much. I appreciate it.
All right. You're listening and watching The Neil Haley Show. We'll be back in just a moment.